are on the march. The empire is on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
I'm waiting in my cold cell when the bell begins to chime, reflecting on my past.
If you go back to the first executive orders by George Washington when he was president, they had offered him to be king, but he said no way and served out his 2 terms, then went back to his farm, went back to his ranch. But if you go and look at the first executive orders, you can look at them at the Library of Congress, actual scans of the handwritten letters by George Washington. It was taking the amount of money that Congress had appropriated for the executive to put in drapes and to pay for pottery and cutlery at the White House for Martha Washington. That's it. That's all. Now, since then, since around the 60s, really, presidents began to use executive orders to do more and more outside of Congress, but it wasn't 1/100th of what Obama is doing right now. I have interviewed constitutional lawyers on the left, on the right, constitutionalists, libertarians, you name it. All of them agree. They've had congressional hearings a month ago. We covered them here, played clips, that this is the precedent-setting event for the presidency to be a dictatorial office. I know that sounds like an oxymoron. How are you elected dictator? Well, Hitler was elected. But the office of the presidency is not supposed to be dictatorial. There's a separation of powers. And quite frankly, the presidency is to be the weakest of the 3 powers. They introduced in the last 100 years co-equal, saying all 3 branches, executive, legislative, judicial, were co-equal. That's a fraud if you read the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, study the time. Congress has the most power because it's the most diverse, 500-plus members today. It represents the states. They're fearful of a dictator. They have the main power. They make the laws and control the money. Then courts are to judge the laws if they're constitutional, off the Bill of Rights, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and common law precedent. And the executive is like the quarterback who gets told what plays to use in international relations, war, borders, state disputes, stuff like that. This would be like the quarterback, let's say, of the 49ers telling the coaches up in the box and the coaches on the sidelines what plays to call. I mean, it's that big of a no-brainer. I mean, why even have coaches? Why even have a coaching staff? Why even have an athletics program other than the quarterback? Why, he can just run everything. He can decide who to recruit. He can decide, I mean, I'm going to use a football analogy here. He can decide what type of shoes to buy. He can run it all. No, the Congress does that. And then there's referees off the rules of the game that are the courts. And then you've got the quarterback that's the president. And I'm telling you, folks, we don't have a Napoleon Bonaparte, the quarterback, running things. We don't have an Adolf Alois Hitler as our quarterback running things. You're not supposed to have one guy doing all this. And that's what's going on. That's what's happening. And I'm not saying Obama's going to stay in office. Let's get that straight. They've had countless national news stories saying Alex Jones says Obama is going to be a dictator. No, I'm not saying he's going to be a dictator. I'm saying he's a 2.0 modern corporate dictator through fraud and all this other absconding with the law, just getting away with anything. But let me tell you what the constitutional law scholars like Jonathan Turley and others said before Congress a month ago. We played the clips. They said the precedent's being set for a total overthrow. You put in a Homeland Security above the law, militarized, 5th branch of the military, as the Pentagon calls them, Northcom, surveillance grids, secret police, spy grids for Al-Qaeda, and then meanwhile, oh, it's for the Tea Party now. We told you that all along. It's for the real Americans. It's for the resistance. They're like the Vichy French who occupied. They're like the Vichy French who occupied France during World War II and ran the government for the Nazis. That's what our government is a client government, a traitor government for the occupying foreign globalists. You know the French didn't even fight. The French stood down under orders by their general staff. Only the British Expeditionary Force, about 1/20th the size of the German force, fought and then got driven to Dunkirk. And the reason I raise that is people say the French lost to the Nazis. They didn't lose. They had an internal government coup to invite the Nazis in, and 3 days after the week-and-a-half-long battle for France with the British, Hitler was able to tour Paris, and the police stood out there and blocked the crowds, many of which were hailing Hitler and loving him. Hitler was popular in France with over 50% approval ratings when he invaded France and went over the Maginot Line and all that. And the reason I raise this, the reason I bring up stuff from the early 1940s is you've got to understand we have a corporate traitor government that get jobs in revolving doors to Fortune 500 who in most cases are bigger GDPs than foreign countries. Half the biggest GDPs of the top 100 gross domestic products in the world are corporate. They're not government. Government is just the legitimizing factor for the corporate fascism that has a small icing at the bottom of socialism chicken feed to make you dependent. They take your job away, they ship it overseas, they set up regulations to shut down competition, they own the only stuff that's allowed to operate, centralizing control, while impoverishing you, but making you totally dependent on them like a prisoner in a cage who has Stockholm Syndrome, worshiping your abusers. This is what abusers do. They take you, they capture you, they get you under their control, and then they brainwash you that you couldn't survive without me. And I'll leave you in this cage and let you starve to death unless you love me. And most people will actually love the abuser after a few weeks of this programming. This is what's going on. And this goes on in relationships. This goes on in culture. This goes on everywhere. This is what these abusers do. This is not an economy based on ideas, based on merit, based on competition, based on free will, free association, voting with your dollars. That's a Renaissance culture. This is a culture based on fraud and deceit and lies. And what happens is the public starts picking up on that, and they start cheating. And then pretty soon you're a banana republic. Pretty soon you're Guatemala. Pretty soon you're Nigeria. Pretty soon you're Russia. Pretty soon you're in deep you-know-what. And so I've got these articles here today. It's up on Infowars.com. It's a Washington Times article. Year of action. Obama vows to act on his own when necessary. And you saw the ground being prepared for this when he'd say 6 years ago, I'm a constitutional lawyer. I may want to do stuff that'll help you, but if Congress won't, I can't act alone. And then he started saying, I'd like to act alone, but I can't. You know, I don't want to, but I may have to act alone. And then now this year, I'm going to act alone. And he's got all his pundits on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC going, he needs to just get the job done because Congress is broken. Why, they won't. He's launching military operations without Congress, shutting down power plants without Congress, opening the borders up, legalizing illegals by fiat without Congress, implementing whatever portions of Obamacare he wants that's law that he helped put together whenever he feels like. That's called dictatorship. So let me tell you, dictatorship isn't coming. It's here. You understand?
You're listening to the Alex Jones Broadcasting Network.
Crashing through the lies and disinformation. It's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
Why do you think it is the mainstream media and the dominant corporations are still defending Obama, even though he has the lowest approval rating of any president in history, including Richard Nixon? It's because he's their man. Do you think a bank robber that walks into a bank and says, everybody put your hands up, and ties people up and kicks the clerk in the guts is popular with the people being robbed? Do you think a woman being grabbed in an alleyway and being raped by a gang of thugs, do you think they care if she doesn't like them? No, they don't care. They know what they're doing, but they have to create the illusion in mass politics and mass movements that you're all alone. You're the only one that doesn't like Obama. You're the only one that doesn't like Obamacare. Doesn't matter if the numbers show 80+% are now against it. It was 70% just a few months ago. It doesn't matter if you can go read the bill and it's a total scam fraud to rip everybody off and implode the economy. It doesn't matter. They've just got to make you feel like you're alone and you're the only person who thinks like this, even though the vast majority do, and even though it's all illegal and Congress has a 6% approval rating. I've never heard of a government with an approval rating that low. Even though you've got a total collapse of confidence in the system, we're all individuals, so they use that against us, that we don't know that almost everyone around us is upset as well. We could change this very, very quickly. We have the hearts and minds of the people on average. They know that things are going in a bad direction. But I want to say something to the folks out there that aren't really concerned about this, that think it's going to work itself out. There's never been cases in history where governments started acting this dictatorial and doing the things they're doing and arming domestically against the domestic population and setting up secret police networks on record as they're doing. There's never been a time that this was done, and I'm a history buff. I challenge you to show me a time. There's never been a time that it wasn't done by a criminal group or groups as a looting operation to go after their domestic enemies and to lay waste and to take over society and to socially re-engineer. You saw the Red Terror that went on for 20 years from 1917 up until 1930 or so, that killed 25 million people in the first round in Russia, and then spilt into Ukraine, Poland, other areas after that, and then the Warsaw Pact. Looking at this, what's coming out of the ocean, what we're up against is so consciously evil. And it has all these camp followers that are into the corruption and part of it who think that everything's going to be okay and think they're winners, opening the drawbridge, letting the evil in. I mean, they have no idea what the end game of this thing is if they get it through. And I'm telling you, they want to put a Republican in like Chris Christie after Obama leaves who will take the dictatorial reins. See, they're making the office dictatorial. And so the corporate and private and governmental interests that control that office in the future, they are the dictators. It's a bunch of special interest working through a dictatorial executive. It's a dictatorship of the executive and the bureaucracy that is manned, the bureaucracy, by a revolving door of bureaucrats who revolve into government, into the courts, into the top of Monsanto, into the government, into the courts, into Ford Motor Company, into the government, into the courts, into Toyota, into the government, into the courts, into the foreign-owned Federal Reserve, run now by, what, 6 different foreigners that run the Federal Reserve? I mean, our country is run by not just a private Federal Reserve, it's run on record. Go look it up. The Board of Governors, almost half of them aren't even Americans. And Obama's head economist is a French socialist woman who lives in France most of the time. We're run by a French socialist communist. And see, if you're informed, you know about the Vichy French, and you know about Reconstruction, and you know about Napoleon Bonaparte, and then I'm sitting here watching this come down on us, realizing that even intelligent people don't know the history, and they have no idea the peril we're in. So now they're moving to harass alternative media, bloggers, talk radio, restrict internet freedom. Now they're going after the free speech, folks, not just the Second Amendment. They're going after the First Amendment. They've annihilated the Fourth Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the 9th Amendment, the 7th Amendment. They are gutting everything right now in focused military precision, bringing down the checks and balances, then acclimating. I've got articles here today. Well, yeah, we arrested the blogger. He wrote bad things about the judge and who the judge was taking money from. So that judge put him in jail. And yeah, they're using the NSA on Fox News and the Associated Press. And and on the rest of the media to make sure they do what they're told. I mean, you can't have the media criticizing the leader. I mean, we need to arrest people. I mean, what's wrong with arresting reporters? And even the New York Times says it's scary and authoritarian, and they're arresting the press. I mean, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the norm in the world, is living under tyranny. We've had this precious Eden of a little bit of freedom, so we were wealthy. Notice as the freedom leaves, like oxygen leaving a room, as the liberty departs, the prosperity departs. And it's so frustrating to see this unfolding. So how do you counter it? You counter it by recognizing what it is, calling it out, and being a leader. At the PTA, at the city council, at the county commissioners, at your business, at your work, at your church, you hear a bunch of pro-tyranny garbage, you hear a bunch of anti-liberty garbage, you hear a bunch of anti-American garbage, you hear any type of authoritarianism, you need to call these people out and speak out against them and run against them or politically expose them. Do whatever you have to. Record them. Put it on YouTube. You know, whatever. Get serious. Get aggressive. These are aggressive criminals that are coming down on us, ladies and gentlemen. That's not rhetoric. I mean, look at what Ted Cruz said in Houston 3 days ago that made national news. And they're like, how dare the senator from Texas talk like this? It's so radical. No, he's reporting on what he saw. If I was reporting on Nazi Germany, watching piles of dead bodies, like my grandfather said he saw, you know, just tens of thousands of dead bodies. I talked to old deer hunters and folks I knew who were in tank battalions going into Germany as well, and they just saw the mass graves, the mass dead. That's how I know that stuff went on. If they reported on the mass graves, the mass death, they wouldn't be radicals. They wouldn't be extreme. They're reporting on what the extreme situation is. So the media is saying Ted Cruz is extreme. Well, who cares what they say? He only gets more popular as the discredited collaborator, occupier media for the globalist, the Tokyo Roses put out. And he says, president is dangerous and terrifying and becoming dictatorial. What did Camille Paglia call them? She's been a big liberal, a real liberal, for more freedom. That's what liberal means, not tyranny calling itself liberal. She said, this administration and what they're doing and their camp followers are fascist, ultra-Stalinist. You go, well, one's communist, one's fascist. This is all the same at the end of the day, just different flavors of cyanide-laced Kool-Aid, folks. One's cherry, one's grape. Still does the same thing to you. And we are in so much trouble, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot even describe to you how freaked out I am about this. And Ted Cruz comes out and says that Obama is dangerous and terrifying and power-grabbing and becoming a dictator. And they go, oh, he's discredited. He's the guy that was against Obamacare. Yeah, he's discredited. They actually say that as a talking point when it's the opposite. He said it's a train wreck. It was a train wreck. So it's like you call the lottery ticket, it comes up right, and they go, he's discredited. He was right. And they just put that out to make the general public think, well, he's discredited. He's been exactly on target. Yeah, that's discrediting. I like Obamacare doubling or tripling my prices and being a total scam and not working. Yeah. We're going to cover Obamacare when we come back and what it's really designed to do. Look at banks laundering drug money. Look at the Chris Christie scandal and so much more straight ahead. Infowars.com. Remember those conspiracy theorists? They said all your cars were tracking you by the mile, getting ready for a global tax that was going to be paid to the UN, the IMF, the World Bank. Of course, now they've globally proposed it, and so has the Obama administration, and the boxes magically have been put in all the new cars the last 4 years. Oh, magically, boxes fell right in that you paid for in the purchase price to tax you by the mile. That's exactly what all the conspiracy theorists said. You know, the informed weirdos that actually read MIT and government and UN white papers that were public. Oh, we follow what the global rulers do. We think it's important to know what they're up to. Even if you're an evil person, you'd want to know what the globalists are up to, because then in business, you can hijack everything they're doing. If I wanted to, in private business, and I've already done that funding my operation. In fact, I'm getting ready to do this. I'm sick of talking. I've already been showing everybody around here what I can do when I actually try to be successful. If I wanted to in private business, knowing what they're up to, I can dominate. The insider information, because they act like you're all blind. All you stock traders. I don't need inside information. I can watch these people and watch what's going on at Davos and all their little tells and signs they give each other. I can go into the stock market and make incredible amounts of money. I've tried it out. Every time I've done it, nothing but making money. In fact, I mean, I'm really starting to realize how dumb the general public is. You people have no idea what's going on here. A lot of you think that this whole New World Order is going to be fine. You're going to find a position in it. It's going to be nice to you, blah, blah, blah. You know why tyrannies always screw up the economy? You know why tyrannies always create poverty? You know why tyrannies aren't fun, why they're not cool, why you avoid them like brain cancer? Because the tyrants and their camp followers will shut down all their competition to consolidate the market. And then why should they put out a good product if there's no competition against them? And that's why in every authoritarian regime, within a decade, on average, they can take the biggest, fattest, most wealthy economies, like Argentina was just 50 years ago, more wealthy than the U.S. They were the richest country in this hemisphere. Now they're one of the poorest because they let a political class of crooks come in and loot everything, but they all wore big suits and had red carpets and had the newspapers bought off saying how great it was. It didn't matter because all they're doing is pushing BS. And then at the end of the day, they're done and they've eaten the bones off the culture, the economy, everything else. They move on to the next country that kicked them out 50, 100 years ago, that kicked their own tyrants out, that kicked their own corrupt establishment out. And they move on to some other country that got out from under tyranny and is productive, but it's always a generation or two later. And everybody's gullible and doesn't recognize what a crook is and doesn't recognize what a flim-flam con artist is. And that's really what the New World Order is. It's ruled by frauds and con artists and scum and liars. And that's why I want to throw up. Because I'm strong, folks, okay? And I've tried to broadcast 24 hours before. I couldn't do it. I went about 18 hours and got such a headache, I had to have somebody come in and cover for me. I've done an on-air filibuster before. Ted Cruz went, 29 hours standing up and was eloquent the entire time, not even going to the bathroom. I had breaks and I couldn't do it. Can you imagine not being able to urinate? And he sat there and was fluent the entire time, reading the bill and what it would do the day before it went into place. It goes in, all hell breaks loose, worse than what he said. And then they run constant news articles saying Ted Cruz is discredited when he's been absolutely empowered, his poll numbers are up, and that shows their fraud doesn't work. It's like saying George Washington's a loser 7 years into the war when the British surrendered. It's like saying whoever wins the Super Bowl this year, 5 minutes after they win, saying they're losers. But that's how their propaganda works. We're in the face of stinking corrupt tyranny. Ted Cruz, who I'm not saying is Jesus or something. The point is that he has courage. He's calling Obama a dictator, a tyrant, dangerous, terrifying. And he had the will to tell people something was bad before it happened. And the media said, he's discredited after that. Yeah, thinking you're weak-minded. And would go repeat to everyone, yeah, that's that discredited guy, because you know one word like a parrot. Discredited, 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 discredited. I don't know, was Beethoven discredited? I don't know. Was Babe Ruth discredited in the world of baseball? Babe Ruth's the biggest loser in baseball ever. George Washington's biggest loser in the U.S. Army ever. Ted Cruz's biggest loser I ever saw. Alex Jones' biggest loser I ever saw. Rand Paul's biggest loser I ever saw. Did you hear the Drudge Report's over? Did you hear nobody's visiting it? Did you hear it doesn't have any traffic anymore? Of course, it has record traffic. InfoWars has record traffic. They got White House-run Media Matters and all the rest of them every week saying, we don't have traffic. We're over. We're losers. Nobody's coming to us. Nobody likes us anymore. We're done. We're yesterday. We're over. You know why? Because we're the opposition. We're the leaders. We love freedom. We've got it beaten in our breast. We're competitive. We're not slime balls that want to shut you down because we can't compete with you. We're so dominant and so good that we want you to have freedom and compete with us. Come on. Bring it to the table right now. I don't hate Ted Cruz because he's more eloquent than me and can speak longer than I can. I admire him. I wish I could be like that. I'm not a loser. I'm a winner. Big difference. I'm a liberty lover. I'm a freedom lover. I like private property. I like men that are men, women that are women. I like technology. I like going to space. I like being honest. I like building things. I don't like fraud and scams and trendiness and all the rest of the garbage that brings down civilizations and brings down societies. They get up there on their little establishment television screens and then their little websites. And they sit there and say, we're discredited, we have no audience, we're done, it's over. They're over if we just understand they're already over. The only shoe to drop is that we are the majority and these people are a fraud with a 6% approval rating. The only final domino to go over is the fact that these people are con artists, total criminals who know they're losers. Ted Cruz's numbers are going straight up. My numbers are going straight up on every metric. Visitors, listeners, support, viral, everything you could imagine. Because everyone in the system is not a criminal. Most of them made it of their own accord. They were nice to the system, trying to play ball, but now they realize the system isn't playing ball with them, and there is a full societal turning against this scam. The truth is, Ted Cruz is a hero for having the courage to stand up and say the truth, and was proven right, and the numbers show that. The truth is we're exploding. The truth is Drudge is exploding. The truth is all the real media, left, right, center, I don't care who's real, is exploding. And everyone that's selling out, in a world where everybody sells out, what's the value? I use the porn analogy of where people in porn 30 years ago could make $1 million, $2 million a year making a few movies. Actresses, actors as they call them. Really, they're prostitutes on film. But when everybody got into the act, top porn stars that look like Marilyn Monroe can't get $2,000 for a so-called scene now. And see, that's because there's a glut. All of you people sold out and learned how to scam and lie and run frauds, and you've eaten up all the sustenance, you've eaten up all the substance, you've wrecked the country, you've wrecked the culture, you've wrecked everything with your BS and your con artist garbage, and now you want tanks and machine guns and armored vehicles and militarized police and surveillance to demonize and control those of us that don't want to go over the edge of a cliff with you? Who don't want to live in a third world country? Who want to strive for something greater? You have the gall to point your finger at us and say, hey, I know this stuff's a scam, but if you expose it, it'll bring the whole system down. The whole system's coming down, morons. The whole system comes down by design into Agenda 21. It's global, UNESCO, UN law that we're treaty signatories to, 1992. You better learn about that. All you yuppies and fake trendy businessmen who think wearing a fancier suit makes you smarter. Your little pinheads better find out how the real world works real fast, or that's it for America and the rest of the world. Because let me tell you something about these con artists. I've studied them. They're smoking their own propaganda. They're believing their own BS. And I'm going to tell you right now, if these globalists get full control and get a world government run by their computers and all their drones and the rest of it, they're going to blow the planet up. Have you studied Wall Street crazies? Have you studied these big central bankers who don't play by any rules and are nuts? These people are certifiable, and they're the ones that are running stuff. And you laying down to them is only encouraging them to screw up the whole thing and kill the golden goose. I say we deal with them politically before they screw up everything that's called planet Earth and our species. I love humanity. Are we going to stand for humanity, or are we going to let it go to hell?